Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to All Beer Inside interviews, the quarantine editions, as I'm calling them. Today with me is Kaiser, also known as HopCitizen. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
Good. Despite everything, good, because we have sweet, delicious beer. Speaking of, what are you enjoying on the show today?
I got lucky and I got some Auval Super A.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
so Brasserie Atwater actually released this, I think it was last week. And I actually live on the South Shore, so they don't deliver to the South Shore. But I had to spend $100 to get it here.
Oh.
So I bought like the limit of the Auval, plus I just bought a bunch of extra things like the Pressure Day pack. I already get that anyways. So I threw that in there as well, and then a few extra Boreal cans here and there. And yeah, no, it wasn't bad. But spending $100 in one go on beer is kind of like,
Yeah, that's a hurting. I've got myself some Ironworks from the gentlemen at Four Origins. You could see my previous interview them with Keegan back in, I believe it's episode 13 or 14. So you can always check that out. Kaiser, what's the story? What brought you to beer blogging and beer Instagramming?
Pretty much it started from my sort of want to write and my inspirations for writing, which spawned when I was way young, as a young teenager growing up. I used to love listening to a lot of metal bands and sort of like rock bands, and Surge from System of a Down and Corey Taylor from Slipknot really played a huge role in my upbringing to kind of start writing lyrics. I played in a lot of metal bands as well, so it was kind of like just meant to be. And that kind of pushed me to start writing in not just lyrical sense, but also creative writing sense. And I always enjoyed writing sort of like research essays and things like that as well, growing up in school. So that part of it was always there, that I wanted to write for something or the other as a passion project. And as far as craft beer, like it started pretty much when I moved to Montreal in 2011. When I moved here, it was like a little bit of a struggle to try to find like a steady job that could pay well. So at that time, I was mostly drinking, really shitty beers like Budweiser's, Miller High Life, Miller Lite, whatever I could find back in the day. Yeah. Over here in Canada, it was all about Molson Canadian or Molson Export. 50, Labatt 50 actually.
Yeah,
was like the one that I prefer out of all the shitty ones for sure. But so that's pretty much what I was drinking back in the day when I moved here. And then after securing a good job, I decided, now I can get back into the craft beer scene that I was into in California. So I started thinking, okay, I want to discover some local breweries here in Montreal and in Quebec. And I really missed my West Coast IPA. So I just went online, like on the internet, like anyone would, to try to find some information. And I think I remember searching something like best IPA in Quebec or best IPA in Montreal, or some like top IPAs Canada, or something along those lines. And the first thing that really popped up on my Google feed was beerism.ca. It's an article, Noah Forrest, on Great Lakes Brewery from Ontario. That kind of caught my eye a little bit, and I did seek those beers out, and he kind of played a huge role to sort of push me into setting up my own website and sort of information type of a spot that people can come and get the information and then go out and seek these beers or breweries and go visit the breweries or whatever. And I'm not as eloquently spoken as he is, of course. He's really well versed in the way he writes, and he knows a lot about brewing, a lot about beer. But I kind of took it as a way that I can contribute in more of a comical kind of way, more of make it interesting and fun instead of being too scientific, I guess.
Scientific, straightforwardness in a sense, or blunt, I'd say.
Yeah, like I love his writing style. He writes really well, and he knows how to describe his beer extremely well. And he knows a lot about brewing and beer in general, so that definitely helps kind of bolster him up to be like the king of beer media journalism, I guess, as you could call it. But I wanted to try to take a different approach. And although trying to write comedically about a few beers is easy, trying to write comedically about 100 plus is actually really difficult to kind of keep it original. So I found that didn't really work out as well as I hoped, but it still worked out in some way or the other to get me kind of where I am now, 4.5 years into it. So
Yeah, I mean, I just read your last two articles about Masorum and Beauregard, and just uh, like your tasting notes when you're talking about the aroma, the color, the taste. It's almost like I could put myself in the mindset of what you're tasting, which is always like good. It's
Yeah,
almost like when I'm reading a fantasy book and I can picture myself in that world. I could picture myself tasting those beers and really like getting a sense of what they are. Almost like
yeah,
if I were to read the article and then go in blind, and I retained what you had said earlier, then that would totally come across as what I should taste. My palate's not nearly as refined as from what I'm reading for yours. I would love to have a refined palate. I've always said that maybe if there was some sort of course to expand my palate horizons, I would always want to try something like that. So.
sure. I mean, like you have the Cicerone course, right, that you can take. I mean, it does cost money, I think,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I didn't develop my palate by really doing much education on brewing or beer. My palate kind of developed just by trying things. You know, the more you try, the more you kind of understand and see how hops play in, how the yeast plays in, how everything kind of plays into the beer, and you kind of just learn from that pretty much. And then here and there, I will look up some things like just out of curiosity, like okay, like what does a Cascade hop really
Mm-hmm.
contribute on like the alpha acid level? Is it more used for bittering? Or is it more used for aroma? So here and there, you look up things and you learn that way. But it's honestly all just about try as many beers as you can and you remember the kind of experience you had with it. Also, what you were saying that the articles that you've read of mine kind of put you in that sort of fantasy world and actually feeling how that is.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my goal is trying to do. What I'm doing is to kind of make it more of like a story and an experience rather than the scientific way. Like I want to kind of describe what connections I may have emotionally or story wise or something, you know, like just make it kind of fun and interesting that way. So it's cool that you mentioned that that's what you took from it, which is good.
Yeah, I've always been more of a reader than I mean, this show in general is something creatively. It literally started as a joke with me and friends, where we're just like, oh, we're gonna get together and we're gonna get bombed and we're just gonna try some beers.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, let's try this rye aged beer. And one of my friends' comments at the time was, "This tastes like a hug from my grandpa."
Oh yeah, that's it.
So like that's hilarious, and we
That's
kind of
really
associate to that. That's our audio show. That's very R-rated and
okay.
not appropriate for everybody. Whereas as this is more family friendly, even though it's
Yeah.
beer.
See, I think I need to be a part of that. Then I can let loose a bit more.
Yeah, that's definitely we usually do that on a monthly basis. It's just called All Beer Inside, like
Yeah.
this, but it's on YouTube.
Okay.
So the name
Okay.
The name HopCitizen. Where'd you come up with that?
So after I had kind of landed on Noah's article about Great Lakes, and it kind of helped me a lot to try to discover things in Quebec, and also, I mean, Great Lakes is from Ontario, not really Quebec, but it kind of, I obviously went back to his archives and started reading a bunch of his other things, and once that got me inspired, I sat with that idea that I was looking for a passion project to do besides like my main work. Like this is not something I actually make a living off of. It's just a hobby. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy writing. I enjoy tasting craft beer. So it's not something that has any financial gain whatsoever. So I sat on the idea for quite some time, and I sort of started making a list on my notepad on my phone of like names that I could think up of, and I can tell you 100% of them were god awful. Like they just did not work at all. Like it was embarrassing. Like I actually told my wife a year later what I had initially planned to call it, and she was like, "That sounds ridiculous." And I was like,
That's
"So
fantastic.
so how this name came about was it was literally just pure chance, and I wanted to kind of try to find a name that worked with me personally, personality wise, kind of like you have to have some kind of relation to it. And I had been talking to one of my coworkers because I was applying for my PR and my PR was in process. And he was asking me, oh, wait, how long does it take to become a citizen of Canada? And I told him, like, I'm still on a work permit. So once I get my PR soon, then I'd have to wait this amount of time before I can become a citizen. So that word citizen just stuck in my head for a few days. And I went on a smoke break. And I was just thinking, yeah, citizen. Citizen sounds like a really cool word. Like, yeah, I'm not a connoisseur. I'm not a cicerone. I don't know anything about brewing or beer to that level. I know as little as a normal person may know who's kind of interested in beer. So I'm just an ordinary citizen, like everybody else. And then that kind of translated into, well, obviously some of the beers I enjoy a lot are hopped IPAs or pale ales. So the word hop stuck in my head, and then it just kind of dawned on me, hey, HopCitizen, that sounds pretty neat. I think I could go with that. And my tagline too on my website is your ordinary beer citizen. So it worked quite well.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, we started as a joke on a friend. She does a wine version. And so we just replaced wine with beer and the word aside with inside, because beer belongs inside.
Exactly.
So what made you decide from California to Montreal? I mean, that's a drastic change.
It was two things initially, right? So it was woman and job, pretty much.
Yeah. That's all I had to hear.
So I lived in California in San Francisco from 2006 to 2011. And then in 2010, I met someone in Montreal actually while I was visiting through a family friend of mine. And we started kind of seeing each other a bit and going back and forth. And then I graduated university and I found a really good opportunity up here in Montreal for my industry. So I was like, hey, you know what? We're together, we're long distance. We might as well, I found a good opportunity I could potentially get coming to Montreal. Might as well give it a shot. And in the US, I was only there on a work permit. A student permit. So I couldn't stay past my graduation anyways. So I had like the US government gave me 3 months to find a job or GTFO. So I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to GTFO. I'll go to Canada. Yeah. Canada seems
nice. We're more than welcoming in Canada. I love being a Canadian citizen personally. Montreal's to my heart. So
there you go. Right on.
Your photography as well is very nice, very clean on your website. Is that you or is that a friend or?
So that's pretty much me. So the entire website is I have number one, the amazing opportunity to actually drink the beer myself.
Yes.
To write about the beer myself, to take the photos, to edit the photos, to post on social media, and to do all the website work. So I pretty much am the only guy that's involved in HopCitizen. Photography-wise, I'm not a professional photographer. I do come from an artistic background. I studied art in university. That's my degree. It's a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So obviously there's a part that plays into that, but I'm nowhere near a professional photographer. Like I don't know how to use a manual camera to perfection. I can use the manual camera a bit, messing around with the aperture and all that stuff, and the ISO, but not nearly as high level as a professional would. But I do have a sense of color and a sense of composition and all that kind of stuff. So that does definitely play into my abilities to photograph a beer in an interesting way. And I don't want to take it into just a really standard photo. So I always try to change it up as much as possible. Whether it's close-ups or far shots, or let's focus more on the label because this label's more interesting, or let's try to focus on the bubbles of the beer because this beer has a lot of head on it. It varies between the beers that I drink.
No, it's like the pictures I saw, even with Masorum. I was there opening day, and they've changed quite a bit already from opening day to where they are now, and hopefully future in-person interview when we have a chance as All Beer Inside. I actually met them at the La Cuvée this year, which you could see on a previous episode, and they seem like super chill dudes. And then just reading your the whole description of you said they were in a band, you're a metalhead yourself, interviewed Le Fermenter, two guys also in a band. It's like the
Yeah.
creativity from that field moves itself over. And as you mentioned yourself, a Bachelor of Fine Arts, you're basically taking that art and bringing it to beer.
Yeah, that's it. Like, yeah, the guys from Mesorum are super chill, super down to earth, and it's actually crazy how I actually got to know about Mesorum opening and how I actually met Vincent from Mesorum. It's like a long list of like 6 degrees of connection, pretty much. So like in California, I made good friends with a guy that plays in a heavy metal band there called Origin, and he's friends with a guy that I met here in Montreal through him when he came to tour in Montreal. So we became friends that way, me and this other guy. And this other guy and Vincent showed up at I think it was Montreal, and that guy he got super excited to see me. So we said hi, and the next room was Vincent. Vincent was like, "Oh yeah, I'm a brewer at the Trois Mousquetaires," and me and Vincent started hitting it off that way. And then next thing you know, Vincent's telling me, "Oh hey, by the way, I'm leaving to start my own brewery," and he told me the name. I'm like, that is very complicated and hard to like pronounce, but it works.
Yeah, no, I had discovered them because I personally live pretty close to the St. Ambroise Terrace.
Yeah, there you go.
So I was just having beers there, and I'm like, I feel like walking. I'm gonna start walking to Four Origins. And I just grabbed my phone randomly. I'm like, new breweries in the area, and they pulled up. I'm like, whoa, what?
Man.
When did this happen? Oh my God.
Yeah.
So I messaged him, and he's like, oh no, dude, sorry, July. I'm like, but you're already registered. Well, I want to go drink now. So yeah, I'm like I'd mentioned with friends, it's like they started with 3 IPAs. I have one friend, he hates IPAs, so he honestly makes no sense to me personally, but it's they started with 3 and they've expanded and they keep going, and they were named number 1 new brewery in Canada for a reason on Rate.
Right. Yeah.
So speaking, you spoke with them, you spoke with Beauregard. Have you ever thought about maybe creating your own beer and collabing with these guys?
It's not something that I have thought about it, but it's not something that I've thought about seriously, really, until you actually asked me about it. And then that's when I kind of like, hey, maybe I could actually make it a realistic thing. It's just that for me, it's like, I don't know how I would make that work. You know, I guess like BAOS has done some stuff. Noah's done several things. But I know nothing about brewing in terms of how it works. I know the basics, obviously, but not enough to really go in there and be like, hey, you know what? Let's put this hop in there at this time, and let's do this with the yeast, and let's use that thing. Like, it is definitely something that I'll be interested in, but I just kind of don't know yet how I'd go about it in terms of my contribution. I wouldn't want my contribution to just be like, oh, hey, yeah, it's just my logo and my name on the beer. I'd want to actually take part in trying to figure out the recipe if I can, but for that I would definitely need to know a lot more about brewing, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe something, you know.
Yeah, as the show's evolving, I literally just started this in November with my friend, where I just said, you know what, I have the extra funds finally. I bought the video camera when I was in Saratoga Springs, or on my way back from, I should say, on my way back from New York City, Black Friday. Super cheap camera, and I'm like, you know what, let's do it. Let's start interviewing breweries. And he's like, okay, but cool. you do everything and I'll do the editing. I'm like, okay. And there's a reason I'm the host, is because I'm a very sociable person. I love meeting new people. I love talking beer.
Well, that's it.
And that's why
that's always the fun part about it. Like, it's always fun. Like, what I really enjoyed a lot about being, I mean, not like, besides the fact that I'm writing like a website and doing beer reviews and I have an Instagram and all that stuff, it's just what I've always enjoyed the most about, in general, having beer or going to a bar or anything, is that you get to communicate with either your friends or new people that you've never met in your life. Like, you know, you make connections that way, and it's also like you get off, especially these days, everyone's always on their phone, so you get a break from that phone and television, and you focus more on just personal connections with people. You have interesting conversations, and for me, the one thing that I love the most, and I think I've mentioned this on one of the other previous podcasts I've done with Stefan from procrastination is I enjoy having conversations, no matter what it's about. The podcast I did with him went from we're talking about beer to the Queen of England to World War II. Like we just went off on tangents about all sorts of stuff. Like it's just fun to have those conversations, and you will always remember them as you get older and you move on in your life. So I think that connection is important for any human, I guess.
I've met complete strangers at the Montreal who have become beer friends.
Yeah, that's it.
It's the guys from Pork Shop, Dry Sausage. Like I consider them friends now. I constantly just whenever they're at a beer festival, I'm more at their tent than I am at a brewery. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's the same for me. Like, there's a lot of people that once I started doing this, that I would go to beer festivals, and I kind of got to know a lot of the brewery owners or brewers from the brewery, and I've made some friends along the way just doing that, and then other friends were not even they love drinking craft beer, and we become friends that way. Whether it's like through trading, and then you trade, and then one day you're having a share together. Like it's awesome to see how that grows and how you have that one connection that kind of unifies you regardless of anything else.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you reached out to us originally saying like, "Hey, let's get together and talk," and I'm like, "Yes, we're going to do this at a bar," and then this happened. So, but we are talking, and unfortunately, this happened. But we are talking, and we are getting the conversation going. Of you can enjoy craft beer at home.
Of course, yeah.
Now, you mentioned you started your craft beer journey in California. Do you recall where it started? Who brought you out? What was that first craft beer?
Yes, I do. And I love this story. And I think I told it on Box and Hops. It's weird because like that's where it's like the mecca of craft beer was California back in the day. And this was like back in 2006. Like 2006. I mean, there was still a lot of great breweries kind of all over the place in the US and even here in Canada, I believe. I actually didn't drink any craft beer until I was 18, turning 19. And that's when I was at university in San Francisco. And I always just drank the shittiest thing you could find, especially there, it got shittier. I can tell you this much, Canadian regular beer is way better than American regular beer. Like I would much rather prefer a Molson Canadian over like a Miller High Life or a Miller Light. Like it's just not the same. But so I was drinking obviously Miller High Life and Miller Light and all that regular stuff. And this friend of mine from the dorms who I met in the dormitory for my university, he would always show up at these house parties with a 6-pack or a 12-pack of Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. And I always was like, he would always pressure me, like, dude, you need to try this. You need to try this. You need to try this. I'm like, I don't know why, but I don't want to try this. It looks like what is this green beer? Like, no, this label looks crazy. Like, just let me have my Budweiser 12-pack and enjoy myself and get really messed up.
Get hammered. Yeah.
Like you're 18. Like, let's get hammered. Okay, cool. And then one day he just kept pestering me. And I don't know why, but I guess he felt that you seem like you enjoy the finer things in life, so try this. And one day I gave up, like, all right, fine, give me that beer, I'll try it. And since then, it just kind of opened my eyes, and I've never turned back because it was essentially palate changing. I was like, why am I drinking anything else but stuff that tastes like this?
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I hear that a lot from American-based people who get into craft. It's usually Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, I mean, back then, that's like the big one it's distributed everywhere. Like in 2006, when I was in San Francisco, I'm not originally American, but I was in San Francisco. You could find like Stone IPA, Sierra Nevada, AleSmith at a regular like corner store, which you would call a dep here, and like over here, when I moved here, you couldn't find the regular good craft beer in a dep. You had to go to a special dep. But back there, it was everywhere. Like in California, it was all over the place. So everyone could easily get a 12-pack of Sierra Nevada just going one block down from their apartment or their house. But So it was more widespread, I guess.
Yeah, the beer rules are a lot more lax in America, which I like. I mean, even in Quebec, like we do have specialty beer stores, but my corner store now, he's got a smaller craft beer section because he knows he's not an idiot. He knows where people, not a majority, but there's still people shifting. I'm in Verdun, so we're classically sitting on the front porch with Jean-Guy drinking a 50. My father still drinks 50. It's like, how?
There you go. Yeah.
Gross. One of my first U.S. craft experiences was Magic Hat because somebody, my folks have a place in Chazy, New York. Somebody brought Magic Hat. I had the beer, and I'm like, beer can have flavor? Like I was drinking Molson Brador. I don't even think they make that anymore.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, it's like a classic malt liquor, golden label, and 18 years old, not knowing any better, drinking technically illegal in America, but legal in Quebec. It's just like you're gonna have taste.
Man, it's like when you're 18, you're like trying to do like weird shit that you don't really want to do.
Yeah.
And it's, you're playing like Edward Scissorhands, and you're like, okay, I guess that's cool. And then you're like, I don't like doing this. Why am I doing this?
Yeah. Well, even my CJEP days, me and a friend would go drink in an alleyway. We'd be drinking 40s and playing hacky sack in our CJEP days. So times change, palates change. It's very rare I have people who just stick to regular beer. Even when I play softball, I try and bring better beer. At least I'll bring Sapporo or something else, but everybody's just like Budweiser and Molson this. And I'm like, So
like one of the most amazing things that I loved to see was that even though like I have my like my craft beer drinking friends that I've met through being a beer media personality and all that stuff, and then I also have my friends who are my other friends who actually enjoy craft beer, and then I have other friends too that just were never really into craft beer. But one day, one of my friends brought we used to play ultimate frisbee in the park on Montreal. One of my buddies brought Saint Ambroise. I think it was like Pamplemousse IPA or
the grapefruit.
The grapefruit IPA, and I was like, dude, you're drinking Saint Ambroise? And he's like, yeah, I love this. I'm like, I need to introduce you to some other things. And then he was the first one in my like really close friends group that kind of released himself from the Labatt 50s and the Molsons and the Budweiser.
Yeah, I was around, I'd say like 22, 23. I started at Brewtopia. A friend had mentioned like, oh, here's a good beer here. And it's like, I'm pretty sure my first craft was probably the strawberry ale. And it's like, whoa, beer can have like awesome flavor.
Yeah.
And then you just, it was a sudden swing all of a sudden in the last 5 years or so, where it went from just kind of your Brewtopias and your Digicels to so many. Now you're sporting that Hell Farmstead hoodie. What are some full beercations you've done, and what do you plan on doing?
So, I mean, I've done a few. Obviously, like I said, I go to Vermont whenever any good release comes out from Hill Farmstead or something else happens. I go to Vermont once a year for like a weekend, but I go to Vermont every 6 to 8 weeks to 3 months, depending on like what's going on. So that's definitely something I do a lot, but that's easy because it's like, hey, we're here. It's our neighbor. As far as beercations goes, I've done Chicago, and I absolutely, I love Chicago as a city, number one. The people there are amazing. The city's by the lake, so you're still kind of interlocked, but you feel as if you're on like the shoreline because that lake is massive.
Yeah.
So you feel like, oh, hey, it's just endless. It's like the Atlantic Ocean, but no, it's not. It's a lake. And the beer there was fantastic. It's kind of what it was like the second phase of, or the first phase of what inspired me to start my blog was when I went to Chicago with my wife for a weekend unfortunately it was February, so it was really cold.
Oh yeah.
And really windy.
Not a good US city in February.
I don't know why I did that, but hey, I did it. It was Valentine's Day. I was like, hey, surprise, let's go to Chicago. And then I froze my face off. And I was like, Montreal is much better than Chicago. Chicago is freezing.
Yeah,
But,
I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, and I want to go down to a game in December. I'm like, maybe I don't want to die. So,
well, December is not so bad. Just don't go in January, February.
Yeah,
because literally they call it the Windy City for a reason. So if you go in the heat of the main winter time, you are going to freeze.
Yeah, no, I can't do winters that anymore.
No.
Anything outside of North America that you plan on going to once we can all travel safely again?
I guess the first thing would be Maine. Would definitely be a go-to thing for me. Because I always go to New York because I have a friend that lives in Brooklyn, and my wife has a friend that lives in New Jersey. And I always go to Boston because I have a family member that lives in Boston and a really good friend that lives close by in Rhode Island. So I've always been continuously going to like New York or Boston. Like I go to New York every fall, and I go to Boston every other fall. So those spots are very common for me to take my trip down to. And of course, California, since I was living there, I have a lot of friends. So every maybe 4 years, I'll travel to California. Not really a beercation, but it kind of becomes a beercation. Like I'm going there to see my friends, but hey, I'm there. I might as well enjoy the craft beer scene, you know. But definitely Maine is one. A second would be Oregon. I definitely want to check out Oregon. Definitely want to check out Vancouver. I definitely want to go to like Gaspésie region of Quebec, which would be forget the beer. The views are incredible, apparently. So just for that alone, I'd want to.
Yeah, I had a friend who did the Maritime Strip. And he did the long way. He didn't cut through the U.S., so it was 10 hours up to Gaspésie, and then so.
No, that sounds like a lot of fun. Because when I was in California, we'd drive up the US 1. So if you're going from San Francisco to Los Angeles, there's two ways you can go. You can go the 101 to the 5, or you can take the one scenic route down. And the difference is it's 3.5 hours longer to take the scenic route. But that scenic route is amazing.
Yeah.
Like it's gorgeous.
Very cool. When it comes down to your Instagram and your website, what's next for you?
I haven't really thought about what I want to take it to next. Obviously, this is a hobby and I enjoy doing it. So I'll continue to do it until I guess I get bored, which seems unlikely because every year there's 5 new breweries that open up that I want to check out. So the interest is a constant flow. I think cycling back to what you had mentioned, asking about collaboration, that might be something I'd want to try out, is maybe try to do a collaboration or something and see how it goes. Other than that, I'm not really too sure. It's not something I've really thought about too much. It's kind of like a thing that I take week by week, you know.
Okay, cool. And growing your audience, how do you draw people in, do you feel?
Growing audience-wise, it's always been hard to kind of hit the nail on the coffin. Like it's several different factors, I would think. A few of the main ones that I can think of is kind of like trying to pick the right content to release at the right time. So for example, like, you know, Boreal made Nordest IPA, write about Nordest IPA when they release it so that you can kind of get like people interested in that new beer that just came out. So that attracts a lot of attention right away because they see it on the shelves, they hear it on Boreal, and they're like, oh, what is this? And oh, wait, there's an article. I can read about it. So that obviously attracts a lot of audience. Posting content frequently is another thing. Like you need to keep your users engaged. I mean, even just, let's say for me, if I'm following someone else, I obviously want to see things frequently so that I can keep continuing to see the content. Like, oh, hey, that's cool. Oh, hey, that's cool. If you give too many gaps, then it's more like a swipe by. So you got to keep it flowing as much as you can. One big thing for me was to try to make my photos work well, because obviously these days Instagram's a huge part in how your content is seen, because I know for me, like there's probably not a lot of people that read the full text on an Instagram post. They look at the image and they like it, double tap right away.
Yeah.
So the photo really matters a lot. And I've kind of worked over the past few years to develop how I want it to look and how I want to do the editing in Photoshop afterwards. And so that's very important as well for me to get an audience following. Interacting with your audience is a huge thing. Like, you need to make sure that if someone is commenting or liking your photo or something like that, you kind of continue that conversation. Because obviously it's like, I'm doing this in terms of spreading information as a hobby for brewers and breweries to gain more following or more, spreading that information. And it certainly helps if someone wants to ask you a question or something like that, you actually respond to it. Like, you don't want to be like that ghost Instagram that's just like robotically posting things, because that's kind of like boring. If I ask a question to someone and no one answers, it's quite off-putting. Like, you want to be able to interact with your audience and be like, hey, so yes, Boreal did put out an interesting, juicy IPA, and this is what I can tell you about it. And if you have questions, you can ask me and I'll answer. So that plays a huge role. The last thing I would say is, I guess it's always appreciated when breweries and brewers share your content as well when you write about them. Like, like it's awesome. Like, hey, I wrote this really cool thing and you liked it, and you're sharing it for people to read because you're giving me a little bit of extra exposure, and you're getting exposure as well by kind of sharing that content and spreading the word even more. And that's always, it's not a necessity. Obviously, like, I'm doing this as a hobby, right? So it's really cool when that does happen. Like, it's like, oh, hey, Ben from Auval shared my thing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I totally see that coming from. It's, I mean, myself and my videographer and my cohort in this adventure, Phil, we become great friends with Drew from Kanawaki Brewing, and he's shut down at the moment of this recording because of what's happening, but stuff he's doing for the community. And so I'm constantly like, you need to visit this guy. If you don't drink beer, I don't care if you don't drink beer. The food's phenomenal. The party atmosphere is great. Go. And one of my big things right now on my personal and the Instagram as whole as an All Beer Inside is, we're getting a stimulus check from our government. Keep that local. Buy a beer. If you don't drink beer, buy beer for a friend, because you probably have a friend who drinks good beer.
100%.
So, and that's us too. That's how we're trying to grow, is a little more organically. We try and have posts.
I mean, growing organic, like, it takes a lot of time to grow organically, but it's the only way you really want to go.
I mean, I was at La Cuvée, and the gentleman from Vox Hops, he's like, "Hey, you're All Beer Inside." I'm like, "What?" Like, you recognize me now? So
I mean, I would have done the same if I saw you there, for sure.
Yeah,
because I've watched your videos online before we started talking too, and that was like before La Cuvée, I think. So yeah, I would have done the same.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so I have no other questions for you today. I appreciate you allowing us to interview you, or allowing me, I should say.
Sure.
Let the people know where they can find you on your social media, on your website, and all that stuff.
So I can be found on Instagram, which is at HopCitizen, one word, lowercase. I can be found on Facebook, facebook.com/HopCitizen. And you can check out my website at www.hopcitizen.com. And those are pretty much the main things that I focus on for them here.
Awesome. So we're going to add all that in the show notes. Definitely check out some beer articles if, like I said, you want to get into the mindset of, I can imagine myself tasting this. Go read his articles. Great photography, great description of the beers. As for us, you can find us at All Beer Inside everywhere. allbeerinside.com, where you can listen to our audio get-togethers of me and the guys. And we're going to start adding people to the show, one in, one out, and we'll see what their views are on our R-rated hilarity, as I like to call it. And as I like to say all the time, drink craft, not crap. Thanks a lot, man.
Cheers.
Toast.